Today at the Conococheague Institute, the theme of the day is 18th century.
Kind of talk a little bit about my general trade, that as a bodger or a green woodworker. So really, if you may have heard of the term treen, so things made from the tree, wooden bowls, utensils, anything that's made from green wood to be used for in the household particularly. And so that's actually one thing that a bodger would work on, is making treen. It'd be part of their side job. They would also make parts for chairs, so stick chairs in particular. In Cumberland County, in the very early part of the 1700s, there were over 51 registered chair makers in Cumberland County. So there were a lot of parts for chairs being made. Part of that process would be a bodger, someone who takes a tree, breaks it down into its usable parts, and takes those directly to the chair maker. The chair maker may also do the bodging himself, and many bodgers were also chair makers. So it's a unique and kind of an interesting trade. I've enjoyed it. There's always more to learn as you dig deep into the history of not only green woodworking, but the wonderful history of South Central Pennsylvania and Cumberland County.
Hi, I'm Kateri Fiker of Fiker's Finest. I am a 18th century clother. I specialize in clothing for the middle-end sort, artisans, and mechanics. I research and replicate historically accurate items. I also do a lot of living history and demonstrations. Today we're at the Conococheague Institute talking about trades, and we've made some pin cushions and pin balls while here on site.
Welcome to the Fly on the Turnip. Today I am portraying an innkeeper, tavern owner, ordinary keeper, however you want to look at it. A tavern, ordinary, was a typical area on the frontier and in the bigger cities, and catered to the traveler. So that's what we do here, is we are catering to the different travelers. We would provide food, drink, libations, a place to sleep, and most importantly, a pasture or a stockade to place the animals for an overnight stay. Even though where we're at today was not original to the site, there would have been an ordinary somewhere within the 10 miles of where we are at today. So, get a chance, stop by.
Hello, I'm Leanne from Stonehouse History. Here today with my husband Jay, and we're also here with Kat and her kids, David and Larna from Fiker's Finest, and Keith and Angie Tabor from Oak Grove Farm Brewing, Historic Farm Brewing. We are here at the Conococheague talking today about the 18th century trades. And of luxury, my husband is a bodger. It's lower middle class, so it's really truly not gold and silver things. But it's fun being the wife of the bodger because it makes me a jack of all trades. I don't get the luxury of having a trade name. Kat would be a seamstress or a tailor historically, and Keith's wife could potentially even be a brewer. But I am just literally the housewife or the wife of the bodger. But on the flip side to that title, I get to be equally in power as much as it comes to it for women in the 18th century for my husband, because I'm managing the house. So I'm doing the gardening, I'm helping him to market his treenware, I'm setting up market stalls, I'm supplementing our income with the tapes that I might be weaving, or if I have a bigger loom, any fabrics that I could be making. I could be helping the neighborhood with any medicinals or gardening medicines that I could be making or growing. So it's really an interesting and fun adventure when it comes to not having a trade as well.
Hi there, this is Leanne, and behind me is David Jr. We are here with some of our friends to do a nice little talk about all the different things that we've been discussing with the public today.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. Unfortunately, because of the site, we can't do live feeds. So we decided to do a little chat afterwards, and here we go. So here we are with Keith, Kat, and my husband Jay. We have Oak Grove Historic Farm Brewing.
Oak Grove Farm Historical Brewing.
That one. We have Fiker's Finest and then Stonehouse History. So without further ado, we're going to just start off with our little question and answers. So the first question that we usually get asked on a day like today, when it's about 90 degrees with about 90% humidity, is, are you hot? Care to talk about that?
I'm gonna put that to the clothing rule.
So I'll jump into that one. Most of the time, it's not too terribly hot. We're in all natural fabrics. Most of us are wearing linen. They did wear lots of layers, but on a day like today, you can see Jay is just in his shirt. I'm down to my shift and stays, and you modify your activity. You know, we choose to do different items around the homestead at different parts of the day. The morning, you're more active, more physical work. The afternoon, when it's hot, you know, we're going down to the creek and sitting in the shade where it's nice and cool and working on other items. You change what you're doing and you change your dress.
Absolutely, and I think with the work that I'm doing as a bodger, working with the tools that I have behind me, setting up something like a fly to provide you with a little bit of shade would have been very common, but also stripping down to your shirt and working in just a shirt is depicted a lot amongst the tradesmen in the 18th century. So you see a lot of that, wearing things like these little workman's caps instead of wearing your heavy wool coat, staying in the shade and changing your activity. So instead of doing heavy laborious things, you're working more on the carving of things where you can sit and be a little less active when it is really hot.
Something else that we know a lot of reenactors and living historians do, and they would have done back then, is they would have taken their hats and their kerchiefs off, soaked them in water, and then put them back on as a natural air conditioning when the wind does blow.
So even with that, I mean, Kat and Jay both said it. This morning I started out with actually splitting the wood. I wouldn't have split wood here this afternoon because it is so much hotter. So from there, after splitting the wood, then I moved into the tavern and actually was in the shade and inside most of the day with the air blowing, still down in the layers, but also making sure we stay hydrated the entire time.
So let's talk hydration, because everybody knows that we want to drink lots of water, but 18th century water wasn't always 100% good to drink. So what are some 18th century ways to stay hydrated?
So one of the ways is what we're drinking, a lot of us are drinking today, is Switchel. Again, most of your drinks during the 18th century was alcoholic. This is a non-alcoholic drink. Early Gatorade, if you want to call it. But it's cool water, ginger, molasses, and you could either put, in this case, apple cider vinegar, or you could use lime juice in it. The acids are going to kill most of the bacteria, hopefully. But each one of those brings a component to it. Obviously the ginger is going to, we know today, it actually thins the blood, so it allows the blood to flow a lot easier. Your molasses brings your minerals to the water. Even if you were to drink just straight water, you're losing lots of minerals as you're sweating, so you're trying to put those minerals back in. That's why we call it, it's 18th century Gatorade.
Hey David, what was that fruit that we were eating earlier?
Watermelon,
Why do you think we were eating watermelon?
because it has some liquid in it to cool off.
It's exactly right. It's another way that we can stay cool in the nice hot sun.
Cucumbers and pickles, also just cucumbers themselves because of the high water content. Pickles, once again, pulling in the vinegar and the salt aspect of replenishing your body when you're sweating that all out. I know when we're at events, typically things that are in my kitchen are a jar of pickles. When somebody comes by and they're looking, you know, you get that look and you know, here, sit down, have a couple pickles, let's cool you down, you know, wrap cold water around you type of situation.
So we're going to talk a little bit about each of our specific trades and how you might see them vary from a city to a frontier setting, or how their interactions within the city to the frontier may look.
Hello, again, my name is Jay with Stonehouse History. I present a 18th century bodger. Now that trade is going to look different depending on where you are. If you are in a major city like Philadelphia, you're probably set up in a portion of the market with your available wood wares for the chair makers and things. Your different treen is probably be set up at a market stall, a much more urban environment where your clientele comes to you. But out here on the frontier, a bodger is going to be somewhat itinerant. You're going to be making the things that a bodger will typically make, parts for chairs, and then bringing them directly to a chair maker in the area and trying to sell those items, those pieces that you've made for their work. So you're going to see them set up, unlike in a shop or at home. They're going to have kind of a simple little shelter like what you see behind me, where they'll just work in the woods.
Hello again, I'm Kateri Fiker from Fiker's Finest. Today we're out at the Conococheague talking about trades, and lots of different trades looked different when you went from an urban setting out to a frontier. Trying to figure out where I would fit in that is as a seamstress, mantua maker, milliner. I could have been attached to a plantation or somebody who was wealthy that needed a skilled seamstress to travel with them to rework clothing as they traveled and saw different farms, different places. I also could have made a home out here, and then I would have sewn for the community. I would have made different items and resold them. Whereas if I was in the city, I could have been having my own shop, running my own business. Also, I could have done piecemeal work for a tailor. Typically, you see large cities, a large amount of the women were employed by tailors or slop shops, and they were paid by the piece for items that they made.
Hi, so I'm Keith. I'm with Oak Grove Farm Historical Brewing. The trade that I display out here is multifaceted, I guess you could call it. We do our brewing, but we also portray a tavern or innkeeper. So in the city, your tavern or inns are going to be a multi-room building, usually very dependent on where it was at. If it's down along the ports, it's going to be more low class, but in the actual cities, it's going to be more wealthy and upper class. They're always going to provide food, libations of some sort, and a place to stay. Out here on the frontier, your ordinary or your tavern is going to be your central place in the community. It's going to be places that they could go to, but again, your tavern is designed for the traveler. So we're going to be able to provide a basic food, a basic place to stay, whether it's in a bed or on the floor. We're going to provide some kind of a drink, and to get that, we have many ways to get it. We're either going to have our drinks shipped in, which is probably how we're going to do most of our harder liquors like rums, Madeiras, wines, things like that. But the beer itself, if we are serving ale, it's going to be made by us, made by the innkeeper or his wife. And how it's made could depend on whether we have the availability to the ingredients, or it could be a simple molasses beer.
So something that came up while you guys were talking, trades and payment, because in Philadelphia, payment could look a lot different than payment out here on the Conococheague Creek or the frontier. So any thoughts on that?
I definitely have thoughts as far as a bodger is concerned. Folks will often ask me, how much could a bodger get for a spoon, or how much could they get for a bowl? Those sorts of treen things that I'm making, I'm probably not getting paid in cash for, because we're selling those Treen items and we're offering, someone might have a dozen eggs and they want a spoon, and I might need eggs, so we'll make that barter. Barter becomes much more important on the frontier than it would be in a place like Philadelphia, where ready cash is more available. But out here on the frontier, it's a lot of trading and bartering and exchanging of goods and services, which just helps everybody to work together in a community.
So for me, a tavern, I don't have that luxury. Just like today, the taverns were licensed back in the 18th century. Your taverns were told how much they were allowed to charge for specific goods or services. So the way we get around that, especially out here on the frontier, is lines of credit. We were allowed to provide so much line of credit, so there was lots of records that people would come and stay, or would get a meal or get drinks, and the tavern keeper would actually provide a line of credit. And it comes to a point in time where sometimes they would actually wipe the slate clean, is where the term comes from, because they would actually keep a slate record of those. So unlike, I can't always take things in trade, unfortunately.
I could go either way with what I do. If I'm making items and I am sending the market to sell, I might get the cash for them. But also, I think lots of people think that when you're on the frontier, you do everything. You did have a garden, you did maybe have some animals, but you as a community filled in the blanks, so that not everybody might have everything. I do clothing, I make clothing, he makes spoons. I'm not making spoons, we're trading something as a community out in the frontier.
I can get a fantastic shirt from the seamstress and give her a couple spoons in exchange.
So from all of us here at the CI, we hope you enjoyed our little talk today. The CI is a wonderful place to come visit. It's almost always free to visit. They have lots to do. They have walking trails. One goes over the creek, one goes around a little pond, and you can see the local farm cows. They have air conditioning at the visitor center. They have a really great little bookstore. If you want to and you are a member, they also have a library that's open for some of the events that you can check out books, or even just look through if there's any that catch your eye. But always, 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 if you have a free weekend, come check us out at the CI.